national security state. Forget the real needs of the American people. I'm going to vote against this rule, and I'm going to vote against the underlying bill. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd say to my friend from Florida, I do have no further speakers remaining.
I have no further speakers, and I'm prepared to close.
Thank the gentleman.
And I thank the distinguished gentleman. I also would like to offer an apology to my colleague. I committed a parliamentary faux pas when I said you speak out of both sides of your mouth, and in the heat of the moment, I guess what I was trying to say, you said one thing one way and you said at another point in time. So I offer you my deepest apology. Mr. Speaker, we'll soon start another long district work period, even though we haven't given the middle class an extension of tax cuts for the next year. If we defeat the previous question, I'm going to offer an amendment to the rule to ensure that the House won't leave town until middle-class tax cuts are signed into law. And the first step is to give this House a vote on the middle-class tax cut introduced by Mr. Levin, which is the same proposal the Senate has already passed and the President is eager to sign. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of the amendment in the record along with extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question. Mr. Speaker, there is an upside to the Republicans' do-nothing Congress. First, it creates a clear contrast between the Republicans and Democrats. Democrats want to press forward with meaningful ideas to create jobs, improve access to affordable health and education, and invest in the kinds of programs that bring about progress and prosperity for all Americans. I believe that my friends in the majority want to push legislation that either cuts taxes for the wealthiest among us, or increases spending on the military, or does nothing more than pay the bills today, play politics while accomplishing nothing. This is not about the deficit. The United States doesn't lack the money to prioritize our future. What we do lack is the political will, power, and leadership necessary to set gainful priorities. The Romney-Ryan vision for America is nothing more than a reckless sellout to the ideological extremes of the Republican Party, a party that is utterly dominated at this point in our history by a Tea Party dogma, which cares more to preserve tax cuts for the rich than to be about the business of ensuring the well-being of our entire society. The so-called sacrifices continually demanded by the Republican majority in order to provide ever more money for foreign wars and tax cuts for the wealthy are shortchanging the future of this nation. Continuing to move further to the right or to the left does not constitute progress. Furthermore, the closed-door negotiations and closed process is truly disheartening and does not reflect the democracy that is supposed to be the hallmark of this institution. I urge my colleagues to vote no and defeat the previous question, and I urge a no vote on the rule, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia.
I thank the Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. I appreciate my colleague for his words. I never, a lot of folks, Mr. Speaker, have the burden of working with folks whose motives they question. I have the great benefit of working on the Rules Committee with a team of folks whose motives I absolutely never question, because I know folks are operating from their heart and from their constituents' best interest. Let me say, because we talk so much about productivity down here on this floor, Mr. Speaker, Washington Times did an article earlier this year on productivity in the House and the Senate. They called it the futility index, the futility of all the efforts in the body, and they said the Senate ranked number one of all the years since they've been keeping records, less activity going on in the Senate by a large margin than ever before. Then they came to the House and they said, you know what, it's true the House hasn't passed a lot of bills. As you know, Mr. Speaker, we outlawed all of those silly commemorative bills that were not about the people's business but were about folks and their campaigns. Those no longer come to the floor. We eliminated a whole portion of that that was not about the people's business. And what the Washington Times said was this, that we had more time in this House in session than all but 10 Congresses since they began keeping records, and that we'd had more debate in this House, Mr. Speaker, more debate in this House than all but 2 Congresses on record. More debate, more discussion about those ideas and those priorities that are important to the American people. And I have to tell you, Mr. Speaker, there's not a man or woman in my district that defines success by how many bills the President of the United States will sign. Or if they do, they find those things to be inversely proportional. They don't want us to take over any new industries. They don't want us to regulate any new industries. They don't want us to pick any more winners and losers. They want us to stop. And even better than stopping, they want us to roll those things back. We're having that debate in America, Mr. Speaker. Who are we? Who are we as Americans? Who are we as a people? And what is so wonderful about this country, despite all of our differences, there has always been more that unites Americans than that divides us. Always. Can't pick up a newspaper today, Mr. Speaker, without them talking about the ideological divide in this country being as stark as it has ever been. But there is still more that unites us than divides us. I believe when we come into this election in November, Mr. Speaker, we're going to have the largest voter turnout in American history. Largest voter turnout in American history. I have no idea what they're going to conclude. But I believe in this country. And I believe if more of us are at the ballot box participating in this republic as we are required, duty-bound to do, we're going to end up with a better result. I look at the young faces in this chamber, Mr. Speaker. I like to think of myself as young, but I'm in my 40s. The gentleman from Florida confessed his age despite his youthful vigor. It's about the young people, Mr. Speaker. And when the gentleman says America is strong enough that we can handle all of these growing debt challenges, I say to the gentleman I admire his optimism, but I disagree with his conclusion. The numbers I look at tell me if I take everything from everybody, if I take everyone's house, everyone's car, everyone's bank account, if I nationalize every single company in this country, if I take it all and put it in a bank account today, I still can't pay the hundreds of trillions of dollars in promises that this federal government has made to generations to come. We don't have a problem in this country, Mr. Speaker, that we're not taxing people enough. Our problem is that we're spending too much. I serve on the Budget Committee as well as the Rules Committee, and we took that challenge on head on. Head on, Mr. Speaker. They call some things the third rail of politics. We said in this House in a bipartisan way the third rail of politics is failing to deal with these challenges. Failing to deal with these challenges is the problem. Dealing with them is the solution. It wasn't a solution that everyone agreed with. It was a solution that got the only bipartisan majority in this entire town. And we did it not once but twice, Mr. Speaker. This is not a happy day. I usually come to the floor, I talk about how excited I am to be here because we're going to do an open rule and we're going to have the Republic at its best. That's not today. That day was May 10th on the Commerce, Justice, State Appropriations Bill, where we had every voice heard. That day was July 19th on the Defense Department bill, where we had every voice heard, passing those bills in huge bipartisan fashions. That day was June the 6th when we did it with the Energy and Water bill, huge bipartisan majority, and again on June 7th with the Homeland Security bill and the Legislative Branch bill on June 8th, May 31st on military construction, on and on and on. Transportation HUD, June 29th. We've done those things. And the silence on the Senate side is deafening. We could do all those bills again. But this House has already spoken. The people have already spoken. And this continuing resolution gives this body and the American people 6 months for that referendum in November, for every voting age man, woman in this country to come out and have their voice heard. We've done all we can do in this body, Mr. Speaker. Be happy to yield to my friend.
Ask 6 months from now, when we come back, if you and I are here, will you commit that we would have that debate 6 months from now under an open rule?
I'd say to my friend, and I'm happy to yield, I'm reclaiming my time, I have had no prouder moment than our debate on H.R. 1. No prouder moment. Yeah. Though I will say to the gentleman, as the gentleman knows quite well, it is frustrating that we can't do the business today. Yeah. We tried. As the gentleman from Florida knows, we tried all of these appropriations bills. They weren't 6-month bills. They weren't 2-week bills. They were entire FY13 bills, and we did them right. We did them the way they were supposed to be done. Some people won, some people lost, but in the end, a bipartisan majority came together and passed every single one. That's what we should be doing here, Mr. Speaker, and we have. The American people are going to decide in November. Is the problem the House? Is the problem the Senate? Is the problem the executive branch? I have my own suspicions, but I trust the American people more than I trust any other vote that we make in this House, Mr. Speaker. Again, I rise in strong support of this rule. I rise in strong support of the two underlying bills, the continuing resolution bill and our Opportunity Job Protection Sequester Replacement Bill. I urge my colleagues to support the rule. I urge my colleagues to support the two underlying bills. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question.
Back. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 778 will be followed by 5-minute votes on adoption of House Resolution 778, if ordered, adoption of House Resolution 779 by the yeas and nays, and the motion to suspend the rules on H.R. 1775. This is a 15-minute vote.
The 2012 fiscal year ends in 17 days, and the 2013 fiscal year begins October the 1st. This has been debate on the rule for a bill that would provide a 6-month extension of current spending levels. The continuing resolution would fund the government through the end of March. Series of 4 votes here, including the rule for the continuing resolution. Also, the rule on a bill which would require the President to report on alternatives to the defense sequester cuts, those defense cuts that make up more than half of the more than $1.2 trillion in cuts over the next 10 years. They spent much of the day today debating the continuing resolution. More debate on that if the rule passes, as well as the sequester bill. That's on the way. The rule will be considered. In fact, that bill is included in the rule they'll vote on in just a moment. This is the previous question vote. Once again today, Democrats are seeking to add an amendment to the rule which would call for the House to take up H.R. 15, middle-class tax relief. This is a 15-minute vote. And for more details about the continuing resolution, we spoke to a Capitol Hill reporter. Congressional Quarterly, it seems for once Congress isn't scrambling to get a bill done, a spending bill that will keep the government operating beyond the October 1st new fiscal year. How'd they do this?
You know, they really reached an agreement on this a while ago, actually, before they left for the August recess. They wanted to avoid having another near shutdown, of really alarming people throughout the country with the idea that they couldn't complete the basic task of keeping the government funded. So if you may recall, back at just before the August break, we saw Speaker Boehner and we saw Leader Reid come out and say that they had reached the broad frame of this agreement.
In your CQ.com article, you called it a truce of sorts. How much money did they agree to spend over the next 6 months?
Well, they agreed to spend. They agreed to set the level for spending as if they were going to spend for the whole year at $1.047 trillion. It's a little bit dicey to actually just say it's 6 months of that because there are a lot of variables that go into it. But that was the level they set in the debt limit agreement of 2011. And that's a level that a lot of House conservatives didn't want to go to. But a lot of them said that they were willing to maybe back the CR, maybe. We'll see how many of them actually vote for it today at that higher level. And it's only a slightly higher level. It's about $8 billion difference in the run rate, as CBO has calculated, about $4 billion actual difference. It's less than 1% any way you slice it. But they were willing to do that in order to get a 6-month CR, so these final decisions on spending will be made next year when they're hoping to hold the White House.
Seems like in the past when these continuing resolutions come up, they often get bogged down in these policy riders attached to the bill. Will we see that this time?
No, they've really made a strong effort to keep this pretty clean. Hal Rogers, the Appropriations Chairman, obviously had to turn back a lot of requests. There were some things that obviously he would have liked to include. It's not really the policy riders, too. A lot of times programs will need more money, or they'll need a change in the legislative language. The bill is going to fund much of the federal government for 6 months. It's only about 29 pages. So they really did make an effort to keep it clean.
Let's go back to the House conservatives you mentioned a moment ago, particularly the folks supported by the Tea Party. What's the indication of how they'll vote, and is there outside political pressure for them to vote against the bill?
Well, that's just going to keep this an exciting vote today. It's pretty much considered a guarantee that this measure will get past the House. We know that the Democrats will, at least a number of Democrats will support it. It's considered to be a fairly bipartisan bill. Some House conservatives had signaled that they were willing to support a deal of a 6-month CR at this level. But there has been some pressure from outside. You may have seen Club for Growth put out an announcement last night. Representative Landry has come out today with a letter saying that he wants the bill pulled so you can address or try and take out some Libya funding. That seems decidedly unlikely to happen, but they're definitely going to lose some conservative votes on it.
Well, the House taking it up today, and what's the timetable ahead for the Senate? What has Harry Reid said?
In the Senate, he's looking to clear this. Harry Reid is looking to clear this fairly quickly. It's going to be a matter of how quickly they can actually get to the vote, whether they'll actually need to kind of run the entire clock on cloture. So the question is, do we go to a vote a week from Saturday if they really need to get the full cloture time, or do they perhaps reach an agreement on a vote earlier? And in the Senate as well, they will definitely lose some conservatives on this vote, but it's pretty much guaranteed that the CR will pass there, will be cleared.
Carrie Young with Congressional Quarterly. Read more at CQ.com. Thanks for the update. So initial debate is underway on what they're calling a, quote, clean CR. Series of votes here, 4 votes. This is the previous question. And then they vote on the rule next for both the CR and that defense sequester bill. Following that, a couple of other votes, including a rule vote for the bill dealing with energy loans, and finally a bill they debated earlier this week. Representative Paul Wright is back off the campaign trail and expected to vote in this series of votes. We do know also that he's holding a meet and greet for fellow House members this afternoon. Also on Capitol Hill today, reports that CIA Director David Petraeus is up on Capitol Hill to brief members of the Senate Intelligence Committee on the latest events in Libya and elsewhere in the Middle East.
On this vote, the yeas are 235 and the nays are 178. The previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker,
The gentleman from Florida.
Mr. Speaker, I ask for a recorded vote on the next.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
This is the vote on the rule for two measures. One is the continuing resolution funding the government beginning October 1st for the new half of the new fiscal year anyway. The second measure would require President Obama to report on alternatives to the defense sequester cuts, which make up more than half of the $1.2 trillion in cuts over the next 2 years. This is a 5-minute vote. There are 2 5-minute votes that will follow this. Later this afternoon, House Republicans will be able to catch up with their colleague Paul Ryan, who's coming off the campaign trail, expected at the Capitol in time for the second round of votes later on this afternoon. They're having a members-only session in the Speaker's conference room later on today with Representative Ryan, and the Speaker this afternoon canceling his briefing. Nancy Pelosi did hold her weekly briefing, and if you'd like to see that, we have that in our video library at cspan.org.
On this vote, the yeas are 232 and the nays are 182. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on adoption of House Resolution 779, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Calendar Number 161, House Resolution 779, resolution providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 6213 to limit further taxpayer exposure for the Loan Guarantee Program established under Title 17 of the Energy Policy Act of 2005 and providing for consideration of motions to suspend the rules.
The question is on adoption of the resolution. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House passes the rule for two bills. One is the 6-month continuing resolution funding the government from October 1st through the end of March 2013. The other is the sequester bill. An hour of debate on each of those bills coming up next in the House. This is the vote on a Rule 4 bill which would phase out energy loan guarantees like the one given to Solyndra, the bankrupt solar equipment maker. It's a 5-minute vote. If the rule passes, we expect them to take up that bill sometime next week. Paul Ryan is making his way back to Washington off the campaign trail. He's expected at the Capitol this afternoon in time for a second round of votes and also to meet with his fellow Republicans. Meanwhile, back on the campaign trail, Mitt Romney campaigning today in Fairfax, Virginia, and Ronkonkoma, New York. And the Fairfax event happened earlier today. You can find that in our video library at cspan.org. Also, the president, just wrapping up this afternoon, he's been campaigning in Golden, Colorado. That video, too, also available on our website.
On this vote, the yeas... On this vote, the yeas are 229 and the nays are 182.
Ms. Granger.
Votes aye.
Ms. Granger votes aye.
Grimm.
Mr. Grimm.
Votes aye.
Mr. Grimm votes aye. Mr. Smith of Texas.
Votes aye.
Mr. Smith of Texas votes aye. Mr. Grijalva. Mr. Grijalva voted no.
On this vote, the yeas are 232 and the nays are 182. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Smith, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1775 as amended, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar number 468, H.R. 1775, a bill to amend Title 18 United States Code to establish a criminal offense relating to fraudulent claims about military service.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
It's the last vote in this series. Here's a bill that was written in response to a recent Supreme Court ruling. The bill, the Stolen Valor Act, would make it illegal for people to falsely claim military service or medals or combat service for financial gain. Jeff Black of NBC News writes about the bill that the original act, passed in 2006, was struck down by the Supreme Court in June on First Amendment free speech grounds. It mandated jail time for people making false claims about military service. He writes that in their ruling, justices suggested that a more narrowly written bill might pass constitutional scrutiny. And the bill was introduced by Joe Heck of Nevada. So it's the last vote in this series, and we expect the House next to move on to two bills, an hour of debate on each, one funding the government through the end of March 2013 with the current fiscal year ending September 30th. After that, an hour of debate on a Republican measure that would require the president to offer an alternative to the sequesters across-the-board cuts and the mandatory defense spending cuts currently scheduled to take effect in the beginning of January.
On this vote, the yeas are 410, the nays are 3. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the title is amended. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to remove my name as co-sponsor from House Resolution 177.
Without objection.
Thank you.